Okay, in this video I'm going to answer a question from YouTube user Bluefire544, who writes, in jazz recordings I hear comping with the chords, but not just the chords. They, in other words the musicians who are playing, add other things for more colour. Could you do a video on that? Yeah, okay, no problem at all. What I'm going to do is play through a couple of slightly different versions of one song. And that song is Fly Me to the Moon. Very, very famous jazz standard, made popular by Frank Sinatra, I guess. And in the first version, I'm just going to play a very simple kind of chord-based comp. Okay, it might not look simple because it's quite fast, but in terms of what's there, it's quite simple. And then in the second one, I'm going to play a comp that's got a little bit more colour and a little bit more variation, and then talk about how I've done that. Okay, in this first one, I should say, you know, Bluefire544, be careful what you wish for, because I'm going to actually sing the song. So now is a really great time to hit the stop button, which is kind of just down here, or look at some of these other great videos on the right, because my singing, well, you know, I play the piano. I'm just going to sing for an illustration, but just so you can get the tune in your head, just the first time through, I'm going to sing the words as well. Okay, so here we go. First time through, very simple chord-based comp with a bit of a walking bass in the left hand, because I don't have a bass section with me, obviously. Okay, here we go. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hands. In other words, darling, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. There we go. If you're still watching, if you haven't sort of run out of the room screaming, promising never to log on to YouTube again, what we had there was something very simple. All I was doing was playing that quite simple walking bass line that gave me the sort of rhythm and the bass, and just playing stabby chords in the right. Okay, the next time through, I'm gonna play something that's more complex, as if I were actually accompanying one of the singers that I sometimes accompany. I'm not going to sing this time through, firstly so we can concentrate on what I'm doing, but secondly, to be honest, because I find it too difficult to sing and play this kind of comp at the same time. It needs a lot of brain power, a real, you know, a huge amount of mental space. People who can comp and sing at the same time, you know, you kind of Harry Connick Juniors of this world, are incredible. It's a really difficult skill. So imagine Mattoon in your head, and I'm just going to play through a couple of times the kind of comp that I would play. Okay, and then I'll talk about it afterwards. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, what to say about that? 2 or 3 things. First of all, I was keeping the chords quite simple. If you are a jazz player who is into really sort of lovely 12ths and 13ths and, you know, complex chords, I stayed away from those there for a couple of reasons. First of all, as I've observed in the past, my way of playing jazz is quite sort of deeply rooted in my blues playing. So, you know, I tend to focus on blues scales and more sort of bluesy chords. But also because one of the prime roles of anybody who's comping is not to distract from the main event, which is the singer or the, you know, the soloist or whatever. Your job is to accompany, it's not to be the star of the show. So it's not being about too clever, it's about being solid, it's about providing a good context and a solid foundation for, you know, your singer or whoever to work on. So by and large what I was doing was quite similar to the first time through. There's a lot of that quite sort of stabby stuff going on. I was also adding every now and then little tiny runs. And, you know, it wasn't huge, so in the bridge between the 2 times through, okay, so just a little run in there. The other one I used a lot was on that E7 with a flat 9 chord. This is one of my favourite riffs. So let me slow that down for you. So coming from that shape, going to that shape, okay? And resolves really nicely onto that D minor 7. That's another thing I was doing, that sort of quite fast arpeggiation. It's not really a classic jazz thing to do, but it's something I do. That's another little good trick. Getting the sort of the stabby rhythm with the chords at the end. One of the things I always tell people about the piano is, yes, it does melody, yes, it does harmony. Don't forget, fundamentally, it's a percussion instrument. So you can do an awful lot of sort of percussive effects with a piano. The absolutely key thing there, it harks back to that principle I was talking about a second or two ago about don't try and hog the limelight from the singer or whoever you're accompanying. When I was doing little runs and little fancy bits, usually, not always, but usually it was in the gaps between the phrases. Okay, so the singer would sing a phrase, then there's a twiddly bit, then the singer sings another phrase. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. So a little bit of interest just as the phrase ends. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. Again, a little bit of interest as the phrase ends. And then in between the 2 passages, like I say, when you come to the dominant, you can start off with a little bit of a twiddle. So don't try and be the star of the show. When there's a little gap in what the singer's doing, jump in, put a little bit of colour in, riffs, runs, whatever. Obviously there isn't the scope in this video to talk about the kind of riffs and runs I'm doing there in an enormous amount of detail. Look at my other videos, look at other people's videos on YouTube, but there's tons of stuff about this kind of thing. It's all a case of timing and getting used to it. A really, really, really fantastic way of practicing this kind of enriched comping, for want of a better expression, is to play along to records. So, you know, get onto iTunes, download some Frank Sinatra or whatever, work out what key is playing it in, work out the chords. Most of the chords for these songs are online. Get going, give it a whiz, you know, accompany Frank. You know, you're not going to find a better singer to accompany, are you? So there we go. If any of that doesn't make sense, a bit of a brain dump, I know. If any of it doesn't make sense, just give me a shout again, post a comment. Any other questions, I'm always really happy to answer them. So just give me a shout. Okay? There we go.